Hey guys, it's Paul once again with another obscure movie review, and this time I have something pretty special for you guys. It's not a horror movie. For the first time I won't be reviewing a horror movie, but it's just so bad, so obscure, and it's linked to a schlock filmmaker of a movie we've already reviewed in the past, and I thought it was worth reviewing. It's just going to be a fun review because this movie is so bad in every single possible way. Like I said, it's really obscure, and I love reviewing these really obscure movies. It's Nick Millard's The Terrorists. Now, this was released by World Video Pictures. Now, I found this at a flea market. It was an awesome day for me. This one guy was selling this entire video store's inventory, and I got like 30 big boxes for less than $1 each. And although I was looking for horror movies, something about this artwork was calling out to me. It was just so cheesy, and I picked it up, and I'm glad I did because it's certainly... I'm glad to say that I've seen the worst movie of all time, and it's either this or Death Nurse. Nick Millard cannot make a movie. He cannot make a movie. For the life of him, he cannot make a movie. It's amazing that World Video Pictures would even release any of his movies. But I guess at that time, because the video market was so big and it was booming so well, that these distributors were just about to release anything, just to get a product on the shelf and just get some rentals out of it. So a movie this bad, or a movie as bad as Death Nurse, can get a release on the video store shelves. Now let's take a look at the artwork here. What we have is a sniper aiming a gun at an American president. Kind of looks like a JFK kind of thing, right? It's drawn pretty bad. The logo for the title, The Terrorists, looks kind of cool. Other than that, it's a pretty cheesy cover. It's cool, not so bad. The back, very plain, no images from the movie, and there's probably no single frame in the movie that would market this movie any better. It's probably a good choice on their part to not include a screenshot of the movie, because the movie is just so atrocious on every possible level. I mean, this movie is just one of the worst I've ever seen. I remember a long time ago when I first started to watch these things, before I started collecting, I rented a movie called Blood Lake from Blockbuster. And at that time I thought to myself, and this was when I was fairly new to this kind of genre of stuff, and I thought this was the worst movie I've ever seen. It's shot with a home video camcorder, and the whole movie is just friends hanging out in a cabin or whatever. It was just horrible. I just remember in Blood Lake, they were eating Doritos like the whole movie, or potato chips. It was just horrible. And then I saw Death Nurse, and I thought, wow, this is the worst. This is the worst of the worst. This movie is absolutely terrible. And I knew because Death Nurse was so bad that I had to see The Terrorists, and this movie is just as bad. It has 1 point over Death Nurse, and that's that it was shot on film. Not good film, not good quality, but shot on film nonetheless. Now the movie was, I'm not sure when the movie was made. It's a mystery to me. In the movie there are clues that the movie was shot in 1980. One of the guys dies, he goes to his grave, and it says 1942, 1980. So I'm thinking maybe the movie was shot in 1980. The back of the box says 1983. So was the movie made in 1983 maybe? I don't know. And then on IMDb it actually says 1988. There are 3 dates, and I'm guessing that it was made between 1980 and 1983, somewhere in that time range. Maybe the VHS cassette came out in 1983. I don't know, but it definitely wasn't made in 1988. If it had been, Nick Millard would most certainly have made it on video. I mean, shot it on video. So I don't think it was 1988. I think that IMDb is clearly wrong on that point. But let's talk about Nick Millard a little bit now. Early in his career, he was directing a lot of sleazy porn stuff, which is good for him because you don't have to be a good filmmaker to make that stuff. Just as long as you get the point across of naked bodies getting together, all porn is good, right? So that was like probably the best industry for him. But because of the market and the burst in the horror genre, he thought he was going to do something refreshing and trying to be Hollywood at its own game, I guess. And he makes Satan's Black Wedding and Criminally Insane. Now, Criminally Insane, it's not that good a movie, probably his best movie, even though it's not that good. A lot of people don't realize that it was way ahead of its time. Now, this movie was made a year before. It was shot in '73. It was made a year before the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was released. And for the time period, Criminally Insane was a pretty crazy movie. For the time period, I think it's more bizarre and crazy than the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. By far, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a better film because it's more eerie and the cinematography just makes you feel kind of claustrophobic and all these things. It's just a much better made movie, but Criminally Insane was way ahead of its time for 1973, and I think that's something to respect Millard for. But other than that, everything else he's ever done is total and utter garbage. I mean, even Criminally Insane isn't even that good, but everything else is just horrible. Now, I was watching, before we get into the movie, I just got so much to talk about with Nick Millard. I was watching the interview on the DVD for Criminally Insane, and he seems like a really cool, decent guy, has all his marbles. He actually looks like an artist. In the interview, he's actually wearing a scarf. Maybe it was cold in his house. I don't know, it was just kind of goofy. But he seems like a decent guy. But what I found so surprising is that he has an authentic love for filmmaking and cinema and all these things. And he says, despite his age, and I think it's like 60 or 70 now, he still has so much energy in him to make movies. Like, he loves to make movies. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, alright, you love movies, but I can't imagine someone who loves movies that much and watches as many movies as a movie lover watches. I can't imagine them making movies as bad as this. I mean, after watching so many movies and loving cinema, don't you kind of inherit a sense of film aesthetics when it comes to editing and shooting your movie? Because he breaks some basic rules, and this is not like things he does in this movie that are bad. You can't make the argument, I guess some hippie people will, you can't make the argument that it's artistic or they're artistic choices. He clearly doesn't know what the hell he's doing. The editing is ridiculous in all of his movies. I don't know what the heck he was thinking. So it's kind of funny to me that he says that he has this love for cinema and filmmaking when his movies are so absolutely terrible. I'm not challenging him. I'm not saying that he doesn't truly love filmmaking, but I just find it weird or interesting that he loves cinema so much and the movies he makes are so absolutely bad. Because when I first watched his movies, the first impression I got, and I think the impression that most people got, was that the director of Death Nurse or The Terrorist is just an opportunist, a businessman, and he just wants to pay the bills. He just wants to slap something together and put it out in the video stores to, like I said, pay his bills or to make a living or whatever. He's the ultimate terrible filmmaker. I guess back in those days, you could be a terrible filmmaker and have your movie released, because I guess film equipment wasn't accessible to everybody. Not everybody can make a video nowadays like they can on YouTube. They could use their friggin' cell phones to shoot a short film these days. So everybody is a filmmaker, but back then, it was more difficult. But if you did make something, you could probably get it released. Some company out there will distribute it nonetheless. So, but Nick Millard is the bottom of the barrel. He's no Ed Wood. He's worse than Ed Wood, I should say. He's worse than Ray Dennis Stickler. Have you ever seen Bloodshot? I thought that was one of the most terrible movies I've ever seen. But at least that's like so terrible, it's kind of good. Like watching that movie with the Joe Bob Briggs commentary is kind of entertaining. Nick Millard's films are so bad, they're bad. I just find no entertainment value in them except maybe some curiosity. Let's talk about The Terrorist. I know I just went on a huge rant, but let's talk about this movie. The plot is fairly simple. American president's going to visit Germany, and these terrorists want to kill him. That's it. And then you got this American investigator who is also investigating this terrorist group with this Russian guy named Sergei, and together they're trying to stop this terrorist group. I'm not going to go into the plot much because the plot, like in other of Nick Millard's films, the plot is so fractured, has so many plot holes, and the dialogue is so atrocious, and the characters don't even make sense that I'm not even going to entertain the thought that this plot can make any sense. A thing worth noting while we're on the plot is that the movie's only 60 minutes long. 60 minutes. I know there's a lot of debate on what is considered a feature-length film. I think in more the hardcore cinema circles, a feature-length film is a half hour. I don't agree with that. That would make every TV show a short film. Every TV show a short film, which I don't agree with. I think a feature-length film should be anything over an hour. Over an hour. Not an hour, but anything over an hour. To me, that's a feature-length film. Otherwise, it's just a TV show or a short film. But 61 minutes. But despite the 61 minutes, I gotta just get this out now. There is a 10-minute or 7 to 10 minute clip in the movie of a stripper stripping. has no relevance to the plot. It has absolutely nothing to do with the movie. It's just padding. It's clearly padding. In the movie, our investigator, I forgot his name, James, I guess, James Luke. He's with the Russian guy, and they go out for some drinks at the bar. They get drunk. They leave the bar. Next second, we're in a strip joint, and we have 7 to 10 minutes of a stripper stripping. And it's some weird stripping. It's just really kinky stuff, but it has no place in the movie. And in the background while she's stripping, which, by the way, you don't see any of the characters, it's just a strip scene. You hear some really scary moaning in the background. It's really creepy. But it's like he just inserted it into the movie to pad it. I guess we were supposed to think that they left the bar and then went to a strip club. But it does not work at all. It's clearly just thrown into the movie. And it's probably a clip from one of other Nick Millard's porno films that he just threw in the movie. The movie's already, I guess, what was it, like 50 minutes, and I guess they had to hit that 1 hour mark. The distributor's like, we're not releasing anything at least an hour. Give us an hour. And he put that strip scene in it, which doesn't work for the plot at all. They could have edited a lot better. They could have had them in the bar getting drunk and cut between the stripper and them at the bar being drunk or whatever, and it would have felt like the stripper was in the bar stripping while they were drinking. That's what he could have done. But this guy is so terrible at filmmaking that he doesn't do that. He has them leave the bar and then cut the stripping. This guy, just common sense decisions like that would have made the movie a little bit better, or make that insert of the stripping make more sense, but it absolutely doesn't. So out of place. It's just whatever. Let's talk about the quality of the filmmaking here. We got everything across the board. Everything's bad. Writing, no writing. There's no writing, so I guess no writing can't be bad writing. So there's no writing in the movie. He clearly didn't have a script for this. It was shot on film, and it looks absolutely horrible. And I know this is not just a transfer. You could tell that the film he was shooting on was either low quality or a crappy camera, probably 16mm or even 8mm. It looks so bad. Lighting, non-existent, so a lot of stuff looks like crap. Dialogue, crap. Editing, we all know his editing is total crap. There's a bunch of gunfights, and it's hard to explain, but it's the worst gunfight I've ever seen in a film, and I'm sure you guys will think the same. It's just horrible. He thinks he could just cut between a gun going off, gun going off, gun going off, gun going off, without moving the camera at all, and it's going to be okay. It's going to be this epic action scene, but it's not. It looks terrible. It's so horrible. It's like, how does he get away with this? In the movie, his wife plays in the movie. Ingrid, I think her name is. There's actually a character in this movie named after her, Ingrid. But his wife, Ingrid, plays in the movie as like a TV reporter or something. I know she's like a free actor, but it doesn't work for the movie. I'm sorry, but your wife does not record well on film. But she's just friggin' weird looking. And she's also in his other movie, Death Nurse. She's actually a lot older in that movie. It's just a weird thing. And in the movie, I thought she had like a bad German accent, but I later realized from watching the interview on the DVD for Criminally Insane that she is indeed German, or at least she has an accent. So what I'm guessing is with the whole, like, this was shot in Germany at some parts. I'm guessing that Nick Millard's wife's family, Ingrid's family, still lived in Germany, and they were going to visit, and Nick Millard said to himself, we could shoot a film in Germany, and it'll be like exotic. While we go visit your parents, we'll shoot a little film. And that's the impression I get. Also, a thing to note is that it's not entirely shot in Germany, as you could imagine. A lot of it was shot in Germany, but also a bunch of it was shot in the United States, and how I know that is from the license plates. He doesn't try to hide anything. You got those long European license plates, and you got these short American ones. Doesn't try to hide it at all, and he also shoots a lot of the scenes in his house. He uses his own house in all of his movies, and you clearly recognize the same exact house in all of his movies, like Death Nurse. And I was watching this movie, and even though I haven't seen Death Nurse in a while, I knew that's the house from Death Nurse. There's some really stupid plot things in the movie, and I thought they're just like interesting to talk about, because even though the plot is pretty horrendous, it's kind of entertaining, some of these things. One scene is where the Russian investigator goes to the terrorist boss. I guess they kind of knew each other, and says,
I can only warn you not to go ahead with your plan, as I intend to give your name to American intelligence.
Why would you threaten a terrorist leader with telling the authorities who he is? That's the dumbest thing. I'm watching the movie. I'm like, why would that? Doesn't make sense. Like, people with, like, if you're an investigator, you gotta be kind of smart, or if you're like some kind of Russian secret agent or whatever, which I think this guy was. Why would you threaten to tell on him and tattletale on him? The guy has a freaking gun, and what happens in the movie? He pulls out a gun and shoots him casually. It's like, characters in this movie are so stupid. There's a scene where the terrorists are going to blow up this building. It's some kind of postal building or some kind of official building, and the explosive is like in an envelope. And I don't know, I guess it was enough to blow up the building, but you think you're going to see an explosion, but you know, you got to remember, you're watching a Nick Millard film. We don't see any explosion. What we see is his wife, she's the reporter, she's in front of the building, and she says, there was an explosion here today. The building looks perfectly fine. Doesn't look like there was an explosion there. Find some decrepit building that you could shoot that scene from, that news report in front of, to make it look like the building was blown up. No, they shoot in front of the same building, looks fine. You don't see an explosion. This is not an action film. Alright, so that's pretty much The Terrorist. I mean, the movie has like all these problems with it. It has missing frames. It has the same guy in Death Nurse, the crazy doctor in Death Nurse. He's in this movie, obviously. Why not? He's in every other movie. Overall, just one of the most horrible films I've ever seen. And I can't believe that this distributor would friggin' release this movie. It's like, why? I thought this was a super rare movie. I went on Amazon. There's no copies on Amazon, but there is a copy on eBay for $10. So I say get it. If you want to have the worst of the worst movies, or some of the worst movies ever, this is one of them. This is one of the worst movies you're ever going to see. So pick it up. This, Death Nurse, those are the worst movies you're going to see. People say movies like Troll 2, worst movie ever made. Well, those people obviously didn't see Death Nurse or The Terrorists. So pick up The Terrorists as a video collector. I know it's not horror, but do it just to, like, I guess, annoy your friends, to bore them with a really boring movie and see how long they can take it, because the movie is absolutely terrible. I cannot stress enough how terrible this movie is, and I guess that's it. It's just another terrible Nick Millard film, and this has been Paul with another VHS review, non-horror VHS review, and I'll see you guys next time.
Willie, you must stop now. Paul, are you certain this man was not involved in the killing of the American soldier?
Yes. His name is Günther Kohlmann. He is wanted for bank robbery in Bremen.
Will you let me interview you on camera?
No.
You know that I will report this as it happened. But the other networks and the newspapers will only dwell on the fact that this is the third man you've killed.
I had no other choice.
Then say that in front of the camera. Let the public see that you're not some kind of monster.
I said no.
You're impossible.